All right, we're just past the top of the hour, so why don't we ease ourselves into it? I'll actually go back to the very first slide I have here, and I will start by saying thank you for joining us. If you were at the newcomer session before this, thanks for staying, and if you're just joining us now, thanks for jumping into the IIIF online meeting for 2023. This is our working and learning meeting over the next today and over the next 2 days as well. My name is Josh Hadro. The IIIFC staff will actually introduce ourselves in just a minute. But yeah, thank you for joining us. I'll say, just by way of adding some context, if this is a relatively new event for you, we have moved as an organization actually a number of years ago to this kind of bimodal model. So we continue to do a really exciting in-person annual conference, and we'll talk about the location for that later in this hour. But we also think it's really critical for the development of the community and for reasons of equity and many others to have a really vibrant and thriving online mechanism for delivering updates and connecting people to the latest workings in the IIIF community. So that's what you're here connecting to now, is the online meeting. And so we mean it to be just as vibrant, or as much or more vibrant than any of the other events that we do, and really a means of catching all the updates. So if you happen to be fortunate enough to join us at the Naples conference, you'll see a few of the same pointers and announcements that we have in here, but we also wanted to make sure that everybody got a chance to see these updates. So with that, I will start, or we will start, the IIIF Consortium staff will start by introducing ourselves. So you may have interacted with many of us before. We help facilitate all the different calls, but just so you can hear our voices and see our video. I'll start. My name is Josh Hadro. I'm the managing director of the IIIF Consortium. So I help organize the affairs of the consortium, as well as long-term planning and thinking about the needs and how we can best support the community. And I'll turn it over to my colleagues, Glenn and Caitlin, to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Glenn Robson. I'm the IIIF Technical Coordinator, and it's lovely to see so many people on the call. So this is I'm responsible for provisioning technical infrastructure, so looking after the website and the validators and other technical things we provide. But I also help with a lot of kind of IIIF questions and doing a lot of training. And I'm based in West Wales, where my other two colleagues are based elsewhere.
Hi, and I'm Caitlin Perry, the Communications and Community Coordinator for IIIFC. If you're here today, you have received an email from me in the past. I do community support and engagement, which means that I handle our internal and external communications and work on our events and outreach and do day-to-day support for our community groups.
So thanks, Caitlin. Thanks, Glenn. And so, as I said, you've probably interacted with one or more of us, but there's also a great opportunity, and I will turn to this slide. If you are interested in this, in working with this fine set of folks, we announced this a little while ago to the community, but I'm actually leaving my position for another position. But we have great news, which is that we already have a JD in place for filling the role of managing director. And so you have the link there, and maybe one of us can put it in the chat so that you can spread the word to, well, obviously, if you're interested, or to interested colleagues. But we did want to highlight that the applications for that will be open through January 16th, 2024. It is a full-time remote position, and there's sort of a need to be able to effectively communicate with the governance team. So that's from the West Coast of the US through over to Central Europe. But as long as you can capably and reliably overlap with regular meetings with those folks, this is a position that can essentially be based just about anywhere. So that is starting off with some of the news around that position, but we'll make sure to distribute that link elsewhere through the newsletter, through all of our other channels as well. So starting there, and by all means, spread the word on that. And so, yeah, we can get somebody new installed for 2024. So that brings us now back to the top though. So the purpose of this plenary is to provide the community consortium with updates on the really exciting set of things. So there are so many people involved in IIIF that relatively few have a really holistic bird's eye view of all the exciting things happening. And this is really meant to supply a lot of that. Although there's of course amazing work in the community that we can't touch on in this single session. So as usual, if you've seen me talk, you may have seen me say this before, but I just love tying this back to the work that was done by a handful of institutions back in 2011, 2012, just about 10 years ago, a little more than 10 years ago. Was really a set of conversations, right, about just solving problems. It was so practical and so tactical, and it from this idea of a shared canvas and solving the same problem at places like Stanford and the British Library and the Bibliothèque Nationale in France, just that very practical conversation blossomed into this amazing thing, which became the IIIF community, became the IIIF standards, became all the different tools and capabilities that IIIF enables in terms of solving end user problems. So I love this picture. This is the last time we were able to get a huge crowd. This is the pre-pandemic high water mark for our conferences in 2019. Just 300 people in a room, really excited to solve problems for end users and build new and amazing things. This is another view of that community. I love showing this too, really spreading adoption around the world. So those dots represent places where we know IIIF implementations have happened. And the blue dots represent the parts of the community that believe so strongly in the open standards and specifications and the outreach and education work that we do as consortium staff, that they financially support the work that we do. And so for today, so part of the work that the consortium supports is these different meetings and trainings and opportunities. For this particular event, there are more than 400 people registered. We are offering in the theme of working and learning, we had a number of free workshops that are scheduled for the next 2 days as well. They all sold out very, very quickly. And so on one hand, we apologize if you weren't able to get a seat at one of those workshops. We asked the facilitators how many they could handle, and they told us, they gave us a cap. So we apologize if you weren't able to get a seat. But the great news is that the demand was incredibly strong, and it really showed us some very specific things that we want to do and make available in 2024. So you'll see a lot more of that coming. Caitlin will talk a little bit about some of the first beginnings of that in March 2024, but we'll also have a lot more coming over the course of that year. And I also really want to highlight, this is one of my favorite things that I get to do every time we do one of these community updates, is highlighting the new institutions that have joined the IIIF Consortium. So we're really grateful to have the support of places like the New York Public Library and the University of Leeds, which has just come on board and has already done some training for their staff members and interesting things, as well as the associate members of the consortium. So the National Library of Estonia, Vanderbilt, the Leventhal Map Center and the Boston Public Library for Science, as well as the most recent places to join. So the University of Chicago, as well as Dartmouth College Library. Really excited to have these people. So, some of these are really amazing use cases where people from these institutions joined, just joined a IIIF training to learn more about it. And it blossomed into really beautiful usage across the institution. So deploying in their digital collections and trainings throughout that organization. I mentioned this a bit, but the consortium, joining the consortium and actually financially supporting the work that we do not only stabilizes and provides sort of a locus of attention and energy for the work of the different community groups, many of which I talked about in the last hour, but it also really helps us spread the adoption base of IIIF beyond just North America and beyond UK and Europe. It helps us provide opportunities to other parts of the globe, and so lowering the barriers to make things possible in places where maybe there are fewer resources. So one thing we're really proud of, and I'll talk about in a minute, is the work we've done with the Internet Archive, which actually can serve as a free and open access asset management system for certain kinds of materials. So the support of the consortium allows us to really make good on these kinds of endeavors and really activate the energies and financial support that we get to do those kinds of things. So I will say now is the perfect time. If you're interested, and this has been maybe something you've been considering for a while, joining the consortium now gets you on board in 2024, gets you access to a lot of important training opportunities, great discounts on staff training, custom training opportunities, lots of different things, discounts on all the events that we do. So the in-person conference, you pay less than half for the ticket that you would otherwise. So if you reach out to us either at that URL or email us at staff@iiif.io, we can get the paperwork processed quickly and get you on board for 2024. And with that, I really want to highlight the success story of training that has really, really blossomed in the last couple of years, and particularly in 2023. So you heard from Glenn at the top of the hour. Glenn does a lot of these trainings. There's a lot of people who help support this, but really Glenn has developed just an incredible training program. So we do we offer free training materials at training.iiif.io. We also offer guided training sessions, and we were able to do 7 of those in 2023. Glenn has done trainings with 270 students since 2020, basically since the beginning of the pandemic. We've also developed custom trainings for a lot of different organizations. For consortium members, this is at a very, very reasonable professional development rate. So trainings for the Getty, the British Library, University of Leeds. We've done big organizational trainings for VRA and DCMI. We can also do custom trainings around advanced topics like guided storytelling and crowdsourcing, transcriptions, and other interesting ways of making the most of, say, annotations beyond, say, just deep zoom viewing capabilities. All of this is some of the excellent training materials that we've been developing in recent years. And so I want to turn now to just a bit of news from a couple of different groups within the IIIF community. So this isn't a comprehensive overview. There are many other community groups and parts of the community that are doing great work, but just to highlight some of the recent work for 2023. We're very excited to say that we have secured a grant from the Crest Foundation, which will allow us to bring together folks who are going to help develop the way that 3D can work in IIIF. So there's folks who've been working on it for the last couple of years, but this grant will help us bring a few key people to Washington, D.C., and we're working with our consortium partners, the National Gallery of Art and the Smithsonian. That event is happening in January 2024, but we'll be publishing the outputs of that and making that available. So whatever we develop there, you'll be able to see a little bit later in 2024. So stay tuned for that. And I'm also happy to say that these are a little bit earlier in the year, but we had 2 important set of updates, or among the many updates were 2 kind of spec-related pieces that were published. So we published the authorization flow 2.0 in the beginning of the year, which brings the authentication API in line with some of the updates to the image and presentation API. And then the georeference extension is a really exciting way of being able to bring geographic materials into IIIF and be able to work with annotations to just to overlay digitized assets, as you can see in the screenshot, and use control points and encode those using IIIF annotations. So if you have map materials, as tons of institutions do, please do take a look at the georeferencing extension and the work that the MAPS group did. We'll have some links about this a little bit later on too. I mentioned the 3D work that is happening, and so one of the groups we want to highlight is actually kind of a dual group. So we have a 3D community group, which which fosters interest in 3D and connection to 3D standards and different use cases there, and it sort of talks more generally about 3D options and availabilities. And you can see recent presentations here from folks at the Met talking about the OpenUSD standard from a lot of different museums and other organizations. They meet monthly on Thursday. And if you just have any kind of 3D interest, we encourage you to attend those community group meetings. But that's also, that group works hand in hand with what we call a technical specification group. And so the 3D TSG is actually formally charged with figuring out how to align the IIIF standards with the presentation of 3D assets. And so that maybe that sentence, that sounds straightforward, but there's just a huge amount of complexity baked into that effort. And so they have a lot of momentum. They've got these recent events happening. They met, were really productive at our annual conference in Naples, in Italy. They met in October at the DashCon conference in Basel, Switzerland. I mentioned the CRESS-funded summit that's bringing together a lot of the core contributors in January 2024. And what they're looking at, the meat of this work, is determining how to bring into an interoperability context all these different aspects like orientation of 3D objects, how you target, how you bring together two different 3D models into a scene, how you do that with annotations, how you can draw attention to particular points within that 3D model, handling things like lighting and cameras. And as with the entire IIIF ecosystem, we are very eager not to reinvent the wheel. So everything about IIIF is about taking best practices and making use of existing standards where they exist. And so all of this is about just finding the right intersection of those and then bringing that together in the IIIF context and ecosystem. So if you're interested, do get in touch with the 3D group and help us join in on that 3D specification development work. And another new group in kind of an innovative domain is this AI and machine learning group, so artificial intelligence and machine learning. And so there's obviously a lot of hype around AI and machine learning, but there's also a lot of practicality. And IIIF is extremely useful for the practical elements of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And this group has got a lot of interest and momentum to it, and they're really working hard to bring really exciting demos and presentations. They meet every other month on the fourth Wednesday. The next call is January 24th. And they are, as I mentioned, just bringing together a lot of practical-minded approaches to how institutions can make use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, talking about best practices, cookbook recipes, and lowering the barrier for uses, how to do ethical use of cultural heritage materials, labeling for AI-generated materials. So if that piques your interest at all, we really encourage you to join up with that group. You can see the URL there. Yeah, and they'll be meeting in January and then also again in March after that. And I mentioned the Internet Archive earlier, but this has been a huge effort that we are just incredibly excited to talk about. We gave hints of this at the annual conference in June, but I'm really proud to say, and it's not a secret, we're not announcing it here, but really highlight the fact that we have worked closely with the Internet Archive staffers and a lot of community members within the IIIF ecosystem to upgrade all the capabilities in the Internet Archive. And we now have presentation manifests. So we have IIIF capabilities for essentially all the things listed here, for all the books and texts in the Internet Archive, all the images that they have, but also because we're using 3.0, the latest version of IIIF, that means that there are IIIF manifests for all the 15 million audio recordings in the Internet Archive and all the 8 million videos. We also have collection manifests. That's an underutilized part of IIIF, but there you have almost 2 million collections, and you can get a collection manifest for those 2 million items. So that was a lot of work making that work, and I'll show you in a second how you can access some of those. But we also worked with them to put a new image server behind the scenes. So basically now there's very speedy delivery of IIIF images for everything, every image-based item in the Internet Archive, and it's very speedy and works quite nicely. And so there's some workshops this week that cover this, but just to give you a taste, this is how you can access basically any item in the Internet Archive. So every Internet Archive item has an identifier. You'll see that identifier in the URL. It's archive.org/details/the identifier. If you take that identifier and you plug it into any of these formulas right here, it'll give you the item manifest. Or if you're on a collection page, you would plug in the ID to that little section of the URL and you get a collection manifest. We've also done some good work to create what we call helper utilities. So if you go to iiif.archive.org/iiif/helper and then add in an item identifier, you'll get a listing of the manifest for that item, as well as all the different IIIF viewers that we know that will work with that kind of material. So just the beginnings of what we think are some really exciting capabilities coming out of the Internet Archive. And I really just want to thank the Internet Archive staffers who really helped make this possible, really, who worked with us and were enthusiastic and very eager to embrace the IIIF community. So Mech, Rob, Trini, Tracy, Brenton, lots of others. And the IIIF community folks who really did the lion's share of modeling and development. So Mike Bennett, Sarah and Ben Brumfield, Glenn Robson. We met frequently throughout the year to make this work, and it's really exciting to see that all come together. So I'm now going to pause. You've heard me talk a lot. I'm actually going to pass it over to Caitlin to talk about this new community group that is in the process of forming and a few other exciting things that we've been working on.
Yeah, there's so much going on in the community. Not one person could share all of it without going hoarse. So I'm going to jump in and talk about some exciting stuff that we have going on right now and some things that are on the horizon for 2024. The first of those is this forthcoming training and education community group. So we talked about some of the newly established groups from 2023. Really, anyone within the community is welcome to form a community group, so long as you have a subgroup of folks that have a shared interest. But the process for that is that we ask you to kind of meet informally and create a shared vision and develop a charter. And that's where this group is now. So the training and education group is seeking to support engagement with IIIF resources in educational context. So mainly we're talking about colleges and universities, but we also see examples of educators using IIIF in high schools. So they are working together to discuss engagement and support in that realm, and then also to provide educational usage scenarios that can be incorporated into the further IIIF specifications. So if you are interested in this, they are currently meeting every Tuesday almost at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and they have their own Slack. Christopher Gilman and Ben Johnston, who are leading this endeavor, are on the call now, so you can also feel free to send them a message. Okay, and then not totally separate from training and education is the IIIF World Training Events that we have planned for 2024. So we talked a little bit about the training events that we've been doing thus far, but there has been a gap in training for end users. So students, researchers, educators, the people who are using the resources, but maybe not totally interested in knowing the ins and outs of the APIs. So we just ran a training for trainers to create a whole new set of folks who are enabled to do this. And on the horizon are trainings in English, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Chinese. We'll be doing those in local time zones for those language speakers so that they're convenient for the people we want to attend. And if you are interested either in attending one of these or even better, hosting one of these, please let me know. But we'll be releasing more details about this in January. Okay. Also, we talked a little bit about this in Naples. At that point, we had 2 IIIF guides available. What these are essentially PDFs that expound on all the benefits of IIIF for very specific readers. So we've done IIIF for CIOs and IIIF for museums, and now we also have a specific IIIF guide for archives. These are brief, they're like 3-4 pages. I think they're visually interesting. They have lots of great examples of IIIF resources in them for people to be awed and inspired by, and they're all available for free for download on the IIIF website, and I will put a link to that as soon as I am done talking. And we're also in the middle of a community cross-pollination series. So you may know that each month we have a community call where we talk about different exciting things happening within IIIF projects or platforms, things like that. We're deviating from that a little bit right now by having these cross-community pollination calls where we are meeting with other nonprofits or communities of practice where people are focused on similar issues of sharing open resources and the like. We just had one with Connor Benedict of Creative Commons. If you missed that, he is also doing a lightning talk on the last day of this meeting. So you'll get a 7-minute taste of what he provided to us. And then on December 13th, we'll have one with George Oates from Flickr. And we have another one in January planned with the team from the World Fair Project. Okay. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Glenn to talk about technical developments.
Thanks, Caitlin. So I'm going to talk about some of the technical developments that we've undertaken this year, but I'm going to start with one called IIIF Commons. This has come out of the strategic framework for IIIF and trying to kind of map the direction that we go in the community. And one of the kind of pillars of the strategic plan is IIIF will ramp up the number of interoperable systems. So how do we make it easier to develop new viewers and make it easier to make customizations, just generally lower cost of development? There are some things in IIIF which are complicated, and how do we share best practice and make sure that we do the complicated things once? So that's what IIIF Commons is intended to do. And the first project that we looked at is something called the IIIF Thumbnail Panel. And this one is particularly looking at how we can make it easier to work with thumbnails. So one of the things we wanted to work with version 2 and version 3. It can find the most efficient versions of the thumbnail. So if you advertise your images in a particular way in your manifest, how do we make sure that the thumbnail panel can make use of that behavior? And it also handles other types of behaviors. So there are lots of different types of behaviors in IIIF to do with if it's page, if it's a single item, if it's a scroll. And we wanted to be able to handle that in a single thumbnail panel and then reuse it in different viewers to be able to get the benefits of developing a central shared code, which we can use in different types of viewers. So we released the thumbnail panel before the IIIF conference in Naples. And on the next slide, you can just see an example of it embedded in the universal viewer. You can see on the left-hand side, it kind of replaces the current thumbnail panel, but it has all the benefits of being kind of working with all these different material and having kind of lots of focused development just on the thumbnail panel. And if you have a look at the next slide, you'll also see the same thumbnail panel in a slightly different view. In Clover, you can see it's horizontal instead of vertical, but it's got the same kind of functionality to be able to kind of show page by page. And in this example, it's got page behavior. And so we're looking to develop these kind of shared code libraries, which we can kind of lower the cost of development. So if you're looking at a new viewer or you're customizing a viewer, you can kind of go and pick up certain items from this IIIF Commons and kind of embed them in the viewer. So we've looked at the first one, and if we go to the next slide, the point we are at the moment is looking at which libraries we're going to look at next. And so we're kind of pausing to get feedback from the community about what people are interested in. And one aspect of that was we held a workshop at the Europeana Tech Conference in October in The Hague. And here we've got a group of people in the room discussing about what sort of common libraries or missing items of IIIF functionality that people had. And then we broke into an unconference session to kind of split out and kind of really get some ideas. And so we've got lots of notes from that workshop. And if we go into the next slide, what we're doing at the moment is we're gathering ideas in the IIIF Commons discussions. So if you do have ideas and you weren't present at the Europeana Techs, we are calling for ideas at the moment. So we've got a number that have been listed. So a zip file option for tile delivery, IIIF worker for kind of local processing of manifest, a static search without kind of a IIIF search endpoint. Looking at table of contents component, that might be something that'd be really useful to share between different viewers. Working on web maps, so the great work that the maps group has done on NavPlace. Can we create a component to make that easier to embed? And also looking at time-based media library, but we are looking for other ideas. So if you do have other ideas which you think might be common between viewers that might help with kind of community effort, please do add your idea into the discussions. And we're also going to type up the ideas that came out of Europeana Tech. In Europeana Tech, we had a number of groups looking at change discovery. We had one on managing and exploiting collections, particularly for thematic and exhibition reasons. And we also had one on AI to detect cinema images across collections. So we're going to put that all into this discussions, and then we're going to do a call for volunteers next year to try and see which ideas have kind of developer and community input that'd like to take these forward. And then hopefully we can have kind of initial version of the tool available for the conference next year. So look out for IIIF Commons discussion coming, and we'll be sending out a call for volunteers in the new year. But if you do have ideas before then, please do add it to the IIIF Commons discussion. Next, I'm going on to a cookbook. So this has been a community process which has been going for a number of years now, and it's a fantastic way. I use it in the training all the time to be able to show the different aspects of IIIF. We mentioned the matrix in the previous call, where you can see which viewers support which aspect of the IIIF community. And this is all done by volunteers. So we have weekly meetings where we help people write these recipes. They're driven either by questions that have come up in the IIIF training or questions that have come out of viewer development. And then we have a list of kind of recipes that we want to write, and we have volunteers to write it. So we've got 61 at the moment, which is huge. The ones that have recently been published, there's a simple collection from Matt Jordan. So we had some more complicated collections with newspapers and hierarchical collections, but we didn't have the simple one. So that has been released recently. Missing images in a sequence has been a really, really useful recipe. So if you've digitized a manuscript, saying you're missing particular images and you just can't digitize them, but you want to include them in the manifest, with a note to the user about why they're missing. Now I've got a recipe that shows you what that should look at in the manifest, and then we can kind of see that implemented in different viewers. Annotated specific point of an image. So annotation's been a strong kind of theme within the IIIF cookbook. One of the ones we're missing is how do we annotate a specific point, which can be on a photograph, it could be on a map, and we've got a recipe for that now. Hotspot linking is a new one. It was available in the kind of previous IIIF specifications and available in IIIF version 3, but it's quite an underused one. I think I mentioned it in the last online conference. It'd be great to have somebody write this recipe, and that's thanks to Giacomo. It's been written and approved by TRC. And then importantly, the last one, we've had quite a bit of update to the SVG recipe. So this is again to do with annotations. We published the recipe last year, and then we had some feedback from some of the implementers saying it was just kind of too wide. It was too much of a difficult thing. We weren't specifying enough. And so we worked with a number of the viewer developers to refine the recipe to make it more easy to implement. And that kind of shows the process of the recipes. It's very collaborative, and we're always looking for new recipe authors and also people who have got comments on the recipes, and we'll make fixes as we go along. If you go on to the next slide, so we mentioned this in the kind of getting started with IIIF, but the cookbook has been fantastic for the matrix. So if you're ever wondering if a viewer supports a particular recipe or supports a particular feature, then you go to the matrix. We've got Anona, Clover, the NavPlace view, which is a specific viewer just in NavPlace, and Ramp, which is more of an AV viewer. But you can go through the recipes and see the strengths of the different viewers. And it's been, again, great in training and also great for people that are starting with IIIF. In the coming year, we're looking to organise a hack session. So we want to add more viewers. And if there are viewers which aren't listed on this page, let us know. We're going to try and volunteer kind of a crowdsource to find out which viewers support which recipes. We're also at the moment linking to Universal Viewer version 3, and we want to update that to Universal version 4. So we'll be doing a call out to the community for a kind of one-off meeting where we can divide the work of checking all the recipes work with the different viewers. Along with the viewers, we also link to code samples. So on the next slide, you can see At the moment, we're linking just to the IIIF Prezi 3 library, but we'd really welcome other libraries. So if you maintain a different library and you can kind of link a code sample to a recipe, we'd love to link that from the IIIF cookbook. Again, it's really helpful for people that are starting to create manifests. If they can just copy and paste working code from a site, it makes it so much easier to develop these manifests. So we've got this one for Python, but we'd love to have different languages like Java or JavaScript or any other library linked to each recipe. So if you do maintain a library, let us know, and we'd love to link that into the cookbook. Next, I'll briefly talk about the upcoming specification work, but I'm going to pass over to Katie, who's going to talk about the IIIF Authentication API. So I won't mention too much about that. Josh has already mentioned 3D. It's a fascinating place for discussion at the moment. So 3D will most likely result in IIIF version 4, and they're very actively at the moment working at how we're going to work out with annotations, lighting, put multiple 3D models into a scene. So if you're interested in 3D, please join the TSG meetings, and then Washington again, hopefully in January, will be able to kick on and kind of make real progress. But we're already starting to see some examples of implementation supporting different viewers. So it's a really exciting time for 3D. There's a new group looking at motivations for AV, so particularly for annotations, so kind of subtitling, transcriptions, and they're going to have their kickoff meeting on Monday, the 11th of December. So if you're interested in kind of annotations and AV, and potentially it might be wider than AV, but we'll see how the discussions go. Please do come to the meeting, the kickoff meeting on the 11th of December, so that's next Monday. Authentication, I mentioned, is going to be in the next slides, and then content search. At the moment, they've updated to version 2 to make it compatible with the new annotation standard. And the next stage is to look at supporting AV search for annotations, so searching for captions and other types of AV. So they meet every 2 weeks on a Tuesday. So please do come along to those presentations. And the next one, I will pass over to Katie to give an update on the IIIF authentication spec.
Hello, everyone. My name is Katie Amaral, and I'm a software engineer at Harvard University Library Technology Services. And I'm also a member of the IIIF Auth Technical Specification Group. And today I'm going to be giving an update on what we've been working on. So next slide, please. So as was mentioned, the IIIF Authorization 2.0 specification was recently released in June, and that covers access control patterns for content resources. And recently, we've been working on a new specification for access control patterns for IIIF presentation and content search APIs. So that includes manifests, collections, annotation pages, and search results. Next slide, please. We've also been taking a look at the upcoming limitation with third-party cookies. Google has announced that they will be phasing out the usage of third-party cookies coming up in 2024. So what this means is that cookies will no longer be sent in cross-site contexts. So what I mean by cross-site context in a third-party context, that's when a cookie is sent from one domain to another. And that will no longer be supported as is. Although keep in mind that most existing access patterns will still work, as the most common use case is a first-party context where cookies are sent in the same domain. But we do want to address the limitation with the third-party cookies. So I'm going to get into some possible solutions for that. So next slide, please. So one promising possible solution for the third-party cookies limitation is that Mozilla engineers have recently proposed a potential solution to exchange third-party cookies in a trusted way. Essentially, on the technical side, this means that this proposal is suggesting adding new browser methods to specify certain allowed domains where third-party cookies are allowed to be sent. So if this extension is implemented, Essentially, this will allow us to still exchange third-party cookies in a trusted way, and we could essentially get around this limitation. So this is right now the most promising and comprehensive solution. And what we're asking from the community is to take a look at that proposal that's linked here, and I will also quickly link it in the chat as well. And myself and Tom Crane as well, who is also a leading member of the group, we've expressed our support for this proposal by simply adding a comment to that issues thread in GitHub, linked in the chat. And we're asking community members to take a look, and if it looks like a feasible solution to you, go ahead and add your expression of support there as well. We're also thinking of trying other ways to reach out to Mozilla directly and try to get some traction on this, because as mentioned, this is the most promising potential solution that we have now. But if this does not pan out, there are other potential solutions and workarounds that we are considering as well. So next slide, please. So some other solutions that, like I said, if the kind of preferred solution doesn't work out, we are looking into other ways to send JOT tokens via scripted API access control. And that will allow mechanisms that could be applied to content resources, such as encoding a token in the URL or sending it via an auth header. Again, this is still in the ideation phase, so and it's kind of a less ideal solution. So this particular solution would not work for web requests made directly by browsers, such as the browser making requests directly in an image tag, for example. But just keep in mind that the auth spec will continue to work for most common cases. But we did want to mention this as, we're aware of the potential upcoming limitation, and we do have some solutions in the works. And hopefully the Mozilla solution will pan out. But if not, we do have kind of backup solutions as well. So yeah, that's all I had. And feel free to let us know if there's any questions or comments.
Great, thank you. So I've got a few thank yous to make. So the first one is a huge thank you to Discovery TSG. So the TSG are the technical specification groups, and these are groups which add new specifications. And once they've kind of got all of the input and they've written specifications, then they can close and say success, and then kind of ongoing issues are managed through the community. So the first one to close was the Discovery TSG, which has been a long-running TSG, looking at how we can share IIIF resources with other people, particularly aggregators like Europeana or DPLA. And so the first specification they looked at was change discovery, which is all about notifying those aggregators that changes are happening. And we've seen this implemented in a number of different ways, a number of different institutions, and it's something that we're always encouraging people to implement. The second standard they're looking at was the content state API, which is all about transferring what you're looking at the moment from one viewer to another. We've seen some implementation of this, and it's another one that we're encouraging implementation of. The third one isn't a standard itself, it's a registry of profiles and metadata profiles. So whenever you have a IIIF manifest, you can link to external metadata in loads of different standards, and we needed a way of identifying those different metadata standards. And so we started this registry of profiles, and we've got a process for adding new ones if they're not listed. And then lastly, the SEO guidance. So we looked at this to see if it required a specification, and we didn't think it did. And so instead we're providing guidance. So if you set up your page in a certain way, then it should make it easier for things like Google and other search engines to be able to index your IIIF content. So there's a link there to the website, which gives you some kind of guidance on how to kind of set up your page. But a huge thank you to the three co-chairs, Antoine, Rob, Matt, and everybody that's been involved in the discovery discussions. It's been a long-running group, and it's great to see those kind of things out in the wild. If you do find issues with Discovery API, sorry, or any of the Discovery sessions, please put them in just in the general chat, and we'll be able to kind of help you with any issues you come across. And next, we'll go into the MAPS group. So the MAPS has been a very successful TSG, quite short in duration, but very productive in the amount of things they produced. So two extensions, the georeferencing extension, which is all about geolocating a historical map with a modern map and making sure it works correctly. And the nav place extension, which is linking an image to a place in geography. So it could be a photograph and a point on the map. It could be kind of the outline of a map on a kind of rectangle of where it covers. Two really exciting extensions. And we've already seen lots of implementation of this in all maps, rerun, nav place viewer, GeoWeb annotation viewer, and map time viewer. Really excited developments, and huge thanks to Brian, Bert, Michael, and Elliot, that kind of co-chairs that group. There is a separate maps group on Slack, so any sort of questions on maps, they're more than happy to discuss them. The maps community group is still ongoing, where they're seeing kind of different demos of implementations of this. So any questions, feel free to take to them. But some great, exciting developments with the maps TSG. And then finally, the last thank you is to Simeon. So Simeon's been an editor from the beginning of IIIF, has been really influential in kind of steering the different standards from both the image, presentation, and all the other standards. It's been great working with Simeon. So he's still going to be involved in the IIIF community, I'm really happy to say, but just not as a IIIF editor. But he's got lots of knowledge of the IIIF community and the standards. And so it's been great working with him. So we're going to look at a process of adding a new editor to the editor group and potentially extending it further. But a huge thank you to Simeon for all the work that he's put in over the years, and all the travel to all the different conferences and all the help he's been able to give. So thanks to Simeon. I think I'll pass on to Josh now.
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. And before I talk about this for a second, I just want to really quick harken back, say thank you, Katie, for that update on auth. And one thing I want to highlight is something Katie mentioned, is that the advocacy piece is another thing that the IIIF Consortium can help do. So as we take direction from the authentication co-chairs, as they align on a particular recommended course of action, that's something that the IIIF Consortium can help do, is help speak with a voice, with a singular voice, and say like, hey, we're this consortium of dozens of the world's greatest cultural heritage institutions, and we really need to advocate for this. So yet another reason to join the consortium if you want to help us with that kind of web standard advocacy level. So what we want to do is, we mentioned this a little bit at the annual conference, we do a survey every few years to get a sense of how people are making use of IIIF and what we do, how different institutions, what software they're using. I'm going to just mention a couple of brief pieces here, but this is sort of to lead into a last piece that Glenn will talk about, which is some other community organization work that we're doing with a tool called Cantaloupe, which we'll show you is a really popular tool. So a real range of viewers that are used by the community, Mirador and Universal Viewer, way out in front, but there's also a long tail of a lot of custom viewers or smaller viewers, purpose-built viewers. So we mentioned the viewer matrix earlier. There's a lot of different use cases out there, and so there's a lot of different viewers represented in some of the results of this survey. And similarly, we see this with image servers. There's a lot of different ways to put your materials up and online. But what we've seen actually for a number of years is just a real density of institutions making use of something called Cantaloupe. There's a variety of reasons for that. Maybe we can talk about those at another time or in the questions. But this has been a long time set of software server tools that make it relatively straightforward to present IIIF images. And I'll let Glenn talk about this in just a minute, but sort of real critical mass in the community and some help that we were able to offer to them in terms of development and security support.
So yeah, as Josh mentioned, and this is kind of comes under the strategic pillar as well for kind of supporting the community, particularly with software. So we noticed through the survey and also through just anecdotally how useful Cantaloupe was and how many different organizations were using Cantaloupe. So the Internet Archive is another one. When we looked at kind of the different image servers we were going to use for supporting that, we decided Cantaloupe because it's very customizable. And there's also a lot of commercial providers that also use Cantaloupe and the hood. We talked to the organization that ran Cantaloupe, and they're still interested in maintaining it, but they just haven't got the time at the moment to dedicate to particularly the kind of the maintenance of the software. And so in the short term, we've offered our help in applying a security update to Cantaloupe. So because it hasn't been kind of actively maintained recently, then a lot of the kind of external dependencies have got various security issues. So I'm currently working on creating a version which has most up-to-date libraries that we can contribute back to the Cantaloupe maintainers, and then they can kind of bring it back into Cantaloupe. And then ideally, I'd like to see get to a place where there's a kind of community support model for Cantaloupe. So rather than just kind of one institution having to do all of the work, that we can go for a community of kind of committers. But that's a process we're kind of working with the developers of Cantaloupe to see if we can do it in a good particular way. So at the moment we've got the Cantaloupe and the security fixes, and I've been doing lots of training recently, and so it's kind of fallen behind, but hopefully we're getting close to having a version which we can submit then to the developers for them merging into and creating a new version which has all of the latest libraries without any of the security issues, and then hopefully look at the kind of feature development and active maintenance beyond that.
Caitlin, you want to bring us home? Yeah.
Jump in and say, as we talked about in the beginning of this session, we try to have a really robust online meeting, and then also an in-person meeting that is shifts around from place to place all over the globe. And in 2024, I'm very pleased to report that we will be in Los Angeles, California, because the conference will be jointly hosted by the J. Paul Getty Institute and the University of California, Los Angeles. So we'll have, as in past years, some full days of programming as well as a showcase for newcomers. And the call for proposals is forthcoming. That is in the works, and we should have that posted and available for folks to work on over the winter holidays.
Thanks, Caitlin. I think, whoops, sorry, let me end on this. So we are coming up, we want to give at least a 5-minute break between this and the session at the top of the hour, but do stay with us. We have a set of lightning talks. So we have this first set of 5 lightning talks happening in just a few minutes. We'll have, they're pre-recorded, so we'll be playing those, but we also have many of the contributors who are going to be available to answer questions in the chat, and we'll have some time for questions in that next session as well. But yeah, let me just wrap this up. So please do stay on, and it'll be the same Zoom URL. You can stay on. We'll take a 5-minute break. But let me turn to this last slide and just once again express my gratitude. First, I'll say to Glenn and Caitlin, just as you can see from this update, a huge amount of work. The staff for the consortium is quite small, but mighty. So we're obviously not undertaking everything ourselves, but it's really just amazing to see it all in one place. The work that Glenn and Caitlin do to foster and support all the different community groups and technical groups and everyone out there doing amazing work. And then that leads me to saying thank you to you all. So your attention is what makes this, makes the entire IIIF endeavor possible, right? Your energy, your excitement about solving problems for your end users, for researchers, for students, for whoever that might be. I say it all the time, but it's because it is really critical and it's really essential, and it's really exciting, and it's what drives us. And you can see that a lot of this is work that is done by volunteers in the community who are spending time to go an extra step to make things really well documented, to make them open source, to make them easy to use and desirable to use. So thank you for joining us here today. Thank you. If this is your first sort of entrance to IIIF, thank you for coming along, and we hope you stay with us. But also, if you've been a longtime contributor, thank you. as I said, you're really what makes this work. And so we've been doing, IIIF has been growing by leaps and bounds for a little more than 10 years at this point. And with all of this exciting community development and support, we're poised to continue growing by leaps and bounds for the next 10 years. So I will leave it there. The chat will be open. If you have questions, we're happy to continue answering them in the chat. But yeah, we'll take a few minutes break. We'll see you at the top of the hour to kick off the first set of lightning talks for this online meeting. Thanks, folks. Take care and see you in a few minutes.